In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. They ask you about Dhul Qarnain. Say, I will tell you something of his story. We made him strong in the land and gave him into everything away. So he followed away till when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it set in a warm spring. Surah Al-Kahf, chapter 18. In another reading, set in a muddy spring. Atheists and other Islam critics allege that the Quran made an error here by stating that the sun sets in a murky or warm spring. I will show here that the idea that the sun does set in a spring was the belief of the people who Dhul Qarnain found in his most westerly point of his campaign. For thousands of years, the ancient Egyptians worshipped Atum, Ra, Amun. All of these are names for a god represented by the sun. Ancient Egyptians believed that the sun is reborn every sunrise in the far east, and it goes down at the end of the day to the underworld, the land of the dead, as it sets in the far west. East of the river Nile lies Ain Shams, a holy sun spring, as its name Ain Shams means. In Arabic, Ain or Ain means spring, and Shams means the sun. Ain Shams is a spring in the city of Heliopolis, which also means the sun city. Ain Shams and ancient Heliopolis are now a northeastern suburb of Cairo. In his book, The Mythology of All Races, Volume 12, page 31, W. Max Muller, an American Orientalist, wrote, Od, or Un, the most ancient and the most sacred city of Egypt, the city of the sun, the Heliopolis of the Greeks, was the principal seat of the solar mythology. He added, Heliopolis contained the earthly proxy of the tree of heaven, the holy Perse, and the sacred well, which to this day is called the sun's well, Ain Shams, and in which the sun was believed either to bath himself morning and night or to have been born at the beginning of the world. Such sacred lakes were imitated in many sanctuaries. End of the quotations. Actually, the well in Heliopolis, which W. Max Muller referred to, is actually a spring, which is what Ain Shams means in Arabic, where Ain is a spring. The second location lies far west in the Libyan desert, or the Egyptian Western Desert. In the Oracle of Amun and Siwa oasis, as we said before, Ra and Amun are names of the same sun god. There in Siwa, we have another water spring located within the premises of the oracle. Egyptians believed the sun god was born each day at dawn and crossed the sky in a boat filled with other gods and spirits. At nightfall, he descended to the underworld, where he traveled throughout the night, only to be born again the next day. They celebrated the sun cycle daily in temples and sang hymns and incantations to help ensure that the sun god would escape danger and continue his journey. They believed that the movement of the sun god made it possible for the world to be created anew each day. These holy springs are the place where, according to their ancient religion, the newly born sun come out every morning and set in every evening in its way to the underworld. Here we find that for thousands of years, the ancient Egyptians believed that the sun set in spring. It's more likely that they believe that the spirit of the sun is the one descended to the underworld, while the disk itself is swollen by the sky. In the morning, the spirit will rise from the Heliopolis spring and unite with the disk, giving life and light to the world. In the oracle of Ammon in Siwa Oasis, far to the west from the river Nile, in the Egyptian western desert, lies the sun spring where the sun sets in and enters the underworld. This spring is well described by the historians because of the Alexander the Great visit to the oracle during his Egyptian campaign, being the most western point of his world campaign. Diodorus Siculus, 90 BC to 30 BC, a Greek historian who lived at the time of Julius Caesar, published in Library of History about Alexander's visit, as was recorded by the historians who accompanied Alexander. He said, "Outside the fortress, at no great distance there, in another temple of Ammon shaded by many large trees, and near this is a spring, which is called the spring of the sun, from its behavior. Its waters change in temperature oddly in accordance with the time of the day. At sunrise, it sends forth a warm stream, but as the day advances, it grows cooler proportionally with the passage of the hours, until under the noonday heat it reaches the extreme degree of cold. Then again, in the same proportion, it grows warmer towards evening, and as the night advances, it continues to heat up until midnight, when again the trend is reversed, and at daybreak once more the waters have returned to their original temperature." End of quote. So, the spring is warm at sunset. Now we established that the ancient Egyptians for thousands of years, including the Near East civilization, least of which who been in touch or invaded Egypt, such as Hyksos, the Libyans, the Nubians, the Assyrians, the Achaemenid Persians, and the Macedonians, under the command of the Alexander the Great, all have learned about these beliefs when they arrived to Egypt. Also, the city of Heliopolis appears always to have contained a mixed population, and its situation made it very convenient halting place for travelers passing from Arabia and Syria to Egypt, and vice versa. It is then most probable that the doctrine of Ra, as taught by the priests of Heliopolis, was a mixture of Egyptian and Western Asiatic doctrines. All this indicates that the mythology of the sun was known to the Egyptians and their neighbors in the Levant. Before Alexander the Great, also another great king reached Palestine on the eastern borders of Egypt, the great Cyrus, Al-Malik Qurash, who most likely was also told of the Egyptian sun mythology. Both Alexander the Great and Cyrus the Great also reached in the Far East at the sunrise the most eastern point of their campaign, the desert of Thar, which lies north of the Indian peninsula, where people live in tents and light structures. In Quran, Surah chapter 18, verse 90, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, until when he came to the rising of the sun, he found it rising on a people for whom we had provided no covering protection against the sun. Now we have established that the concept of the sun sitting in a water spring was well known and accepted in a major civilization which lasted for more than 3,000 years, During this long time span, people believed that the sun set in a water spring. When the Holy Quran states this fact, it mainly states the concept as was told by the people of these ancient times. In addition to what mentioned so far, if we consider the context in which these verses were revealed, we find that these verses were an answer to a testing questions or a kind of an exam designed by the people of the book, a name used in the Quran to refer to the Jews and the Christians. The story goes that the non-believers of Mecca, in their effort to reject and eliminate the new religion, traveled to the Jews and Christians and asked them to come up with some questions only a true prophet can answer. The Jews of Medina or Najran, depending where you get the story from, directed the mushrikeen of Mecca to ask Muhammad, peace be upon him, to answer 3 questions, and based on his answer, they should be able to determine if he is a true prophet or false. This occurred in the early years of Islam during the Mecca era, before Muslims emigrated to Medina. It was when Islam was weak and Muslims were facing boycott and siege. Some had to emigrate to Ethiopia. So these questions were a test placed by the opposing people of Mecca. Depending on its results, people are supposed to accept or reject the new religion. Under these circumstances, the correct answer, without regard to any other considerations, is the one the examiner had in mind. One of the asked Jewish questions was to tell about a man, a traveler, who toured the earth till he reached the far east and far west. Apparently, the answer which was revealed was in line with what they expected. In such answer, which the Quran gave, the man who started by heading west, when he reached the furthest west in his travel, he found that, or was told that, at the time of sunset, the sun sets in a warm or muddy spring. Considering what was said about the ancient Egyptians, this is a reference to their belief, and could apply to Alexander the Great, who started his campaign from the Levant, moving west till the location where he built Alexandria. Then he left his army there, and took a dangerous desert expedition with a few of his close companions, traveling further west deep in the Egyptian western desert, till he reached the Oracle of Ammon in Siwa Oasis, where the sun spring is located. Also, Cyrus the Great, who reached in his most western travel the Levant and probably Palestine, where he returned the Jews from their Babylonian captivity, permitting them to rebuild their temple in Jerusalem, and where he could have been told of such sun mythology. Or any other great leader or man who traveled west and east. The issue here is that a major prominent civilization which spanned many thousands of years, its people believed, probably in a symbolic nature, that the sun or its spirit traveled and entered the underworld by setting in a spring. They called this spring Ain Shams, which means sun spring, a name we still use till today. Thank you for watching. Please share this video and subscribe to this channel. Also visit almudaraba.com website, where you can find various researches on subjects of importance for Muslims today. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.